This is amazing. We got things happening here. Hello again, people at home and around the world. Back behind the main stage hangar here, I'm Louie Tucci on behalf of Pixelogic. I'm sitting here with Cesar Dacol Jr. and Colin Davies from SpinFX. And I want to say, located in, wait for it, my hometown of Toronto. Finally. High five. Thank you. Yeah, the Hog Town, the original smoke. So I want to preface this because you guys did not cover this. You covered a myriad of things, but this was not mentioned to some degree. Spin has a long history, it should be noted, and a pedigree in the business of visual effects. Founder and CEO Nigel McGrath was also one of the co-founders of, again, and this is definitely worth a pause, and I'm giving a moment of thanks here, of Alias, the creators of Maya, Wavefront, basically. Yeah, take it away. That's.
Yeah, no, Nigel McGrath is, in some ways we joke, he's like the Zelig of the computer graphics industry, you know.
Yeah.
He was there at the, obviously as one of the three founders of Alias Research. And
1984.
Yep.
Yeah, the real 1984.
And then he sort of took the proceeds from that and started a company called Side Effects that did have it was basically the progenitor to Houdini. So he was involved, but it was really, you know, Kim and Greg was their baby. They split off and did their own thing, but you know, Nigel was there. You see him in the pictures in the back, standing there. And then he was one of the early guys to champion the big, you know, Quantel stuff, and then all of the Flame Inferno stuff. I think we had the first or second Inferno or Flame in Canada. So he's always been pushing.
Yeah, it's just a big deal. It's a big deal. And actually, there's even a further connection that most people don't realize, is that founders of the Gnomon School, Alex and Darren, they were working with Wavefront Alias at the time long ago. So there's like this huge pedigree and this long line that goes between Los Angeles and Toronto. And I'm not here singing the praise of Toronto just for the sake of being from Toronto. I mean, there is this very strange connection that exists over like at this point a 30-year period, over 30 years of heritage when it comes to computer graphics. What would you like to add to that?
Yeah, well, I absolutely. It's one of those things that I've often pondered upon. I mean, even Steve Spaz Williams, you know, you know, all the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park.
That's right.
He's another. So.
Yeah, he worked at Spin at one point.
Spaz is. Can I get a full shot of all three of us here so we can get the? Everyone is laughing, smiling. Spaz, if you're watching, you get a thumbs up.
Yeah, it was before my time, but you know, he was there.
Tremendous programming capability there. Very smart gentleman. Very eccentric man. I think eccentric is an understatement. In that regard.
I love Steve.
Yeah.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, sweet man. Met him on the coast of Portugal. Last
did
year.
you?
Yeah, last year, just a little south of Lisbon, a little south of Sanity. So,
but yes, Toronto has a very deep pedigree and a root in the industry. It's very, very interesting, for sure.
It's something, and growing up there, it's not something that you hear about as a kid. I still think that in some ways there is a certain level of boutique-ness to it, where it's not something, and there's great schools, you know.
Sheridan College is one of the big, you know, there's such a source of talent that came out of that institution.
Yeah, it continues to produce top-level talent, and then OCAD as well, the Ontario College of Art and Design. Most people don't realize that. I grew up, like, you know where I grew up, about 6 or 7 minutes from there, you know, by bicycle. So for me, it's kind of this looming picture in the background. It's really an interesting thing. I wanted to ask you, Colin Davies, any relation to Norman Davies, principal at the De La Salle College for Boys?
No.
Okay, he was my principal when I was a kid. He'd stand at the end of the driveway on Avenue Road.
Whatever he did to you was not my fault.
No, he'd stand at the end. He was a beautiful man. He had this white hair, and he'd drive in a Rolls Royce. You know, it was like typical sort of principal. Yeah,
okay.
It was a boys' school.
Okay.
And he'd say, "Tickety-boo, boys, make your way. We got 5 minutes. No sleepwalking." You know, you can picture this guy, right, standing at the top of Avenue Road. Okay, so that's cool. I'm glad we got that out of the way. Actually, a bit of trivia in that regard. Keanu Reeves, actor who you've also worked with on some productions. He's also a LaSallian boy. He was the goalie on the hockey team at the De La Salle College for Boys. And in my junior year, I used to watch in the hallway. There was pictures of the former hockey teams. And I said, "That's Keanu Reeves, the goalie." So there you go. Colin, you have a background in animation. You can take the mic from Cesar for a minute.
Sure.
Cesar, I'm going to, I'll get to you in a minute. You have a background in animation. Where are you formally trained in animation? Would you?
I'm not. No, I'm not. I went to the Vancouver Film School.
Okay.
Was going that route and worked on set for a time. Out of school, doing a variety of different things, just trying to break into the industry really. And then got into post-production, got into editing. I was one of the first, no, I wouldn't say first. I was an early Avid guy, so I got into Avid and then managed to parlay my ability with that software to get a job at Mainframe as an editor. The guys that did Reboot and Beast Wars and all that stuff.
Talking about the YTV animated series.
Yes,
Absolutely.
that's right.
I know my history, man. I'm like,
That's right.
kidding me?
That's another place actually where a lot of talent came out of.
Yeah.
Mainframe back in the day. I know guys that are working all over the world now. Some of the biggest companies. And so that was a great opportunity for me. I came in sort of as an editor and on the story side of things, and worked my way up into sequence directing and then directing episodes. And then I'm just the kind of guy that likes to learn things, so I was curious about the software and curious about the process, and just started to learn and more. And over the years, that's just continued, and I sort of got into the visual effects side of things, first with commercials and then everything else, and I've just been basically picking it up as I go along.
You're self-driven,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. Where are you originally from?
I was born out in Vancouver, but really grew up in Ottawa.
Sweet.
And then was after high school, ended up in Vancouver for 10 years, and then went to Toronto for a 6-month contract and never left.
That sounds like my LA story. Came out here for 10 weeks and it's been almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's really great to know. And that's the side of you that probably most people don't get too much information about. Thanks for sharing that with us. You have a long-standing career in the industry and are also known as a partner at Spin. How did you evolve into, and this is very, very relevant to me, how do you evolve from being a guy who's just self-taught and then end up being a partner at a studio like Spin?
I was lucky, I think. It was just being in the right place at the right time.
We play that song. Might have been the right place.
Yeah, exactly. You can lay that in post.
Right? Can we get that in post? But the wrong time.
Spin was a commercials company, right? And they were focused on doing that, but they sort of saw that the $900 an hour Flame Suite model was changing, and they wanted to get into other things. So they saw an opportunity in longer form, and I was hired to direct a portion of a 3D IMAX project that they got, Cyberworld 3D, and I guess my partners, were happy enough with the way that turned out. Wanted to continue doing more of that kind of thing, and offered me a chance to be a part of, growing that side of the business. And
that's
it was
fantastic.
a great opportunity.
Yeah, it seems like a very natural progression, as with the rest of the trajectory career-wise for you. You just seem to have followed I'll quote our buddy John Brown here for a second, fellow Torontonian and sculpting guru here at the Noman School. Follow your bliss, he says to me all the time, at least 3 times a week. So just keep following your bliss, Louie. You're doing great. Don't worry about it. Yep. Keep going and just keep pressing forward. So great. And that seems to be the running theme here. You would agree. From all the people I've been speaking with, there's this tremendous self-motivation that people are advocating for. There always seems to be this underlying social thesis that I end up uncovering at the ZBrush Summit. And this year it seems to be that if you're willing to break the status quo and go further than yourself, you can take this because I know you've got lots to say. You're at prime. I don't want to frame this. Again, you've showed up. Okay, we've worked together for years at this point on this thing in the ZBrush world. I got to give you your accolades.
Thank you.
Cesar Dacol. It's been a while. I'm going to frame this properly. The Brazilian big guy, I mean, this guy's a leader. Every time you show up, you revolutionize the way that I perceive a feature inside of ZBrush and a workflow. You reframe for me a workflow. You've done it before at SIGGRAPH with thumbnailing, thumbnail sketches. You know exactly what I'm talking. If you haven't seen that one, go back into the annals of ZBrush history. You have to watch that. It reframed the silhouette for me. In this regard, you come back again today and you reframe ZBrush as a potential tool for discussing pre-visualization and animation.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Well, listen. I think one of the wonderful things about ZBrush is that it can be anything, and if there's anything that I always love about these events is just seeing the different approach and takes on workflows that people have. And really, what I propose today, what I showed, is just another workflow. It's a way to approach a challenge that we have in production. And what I really love, especially now with R8, is that since it's every time R8 comes out, it's a game changer.
It's mind-boggling.
Every single time it comes out.
The topology tools, the Z modeler, and this is, I don't have to sell ZBrush. I don't even work full time for the company anymore. The Z modeler, take it away.
We're doing something right now that we can't talk about, but I'll preface it this way, that would have taken months to do, and we're doing it in hours. And it's because of ZBrush, and in the future will show that. But it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what you can do. It's crazy. So, but just to piggyback on what you were saying about, I always tell, I'm a father. I have 3 kids, and I always tell my kids,
You're a braver man than I am. I have 1.
You have to be willing to walk through the door. No matter how scary it is, you got to walk through the door, and you got to keep walking because you don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the most important lesson in life. That it's one thing to say I want to be this, I want to do that. It's another thing for you to go out there and do it, because you can't sit in your basement and hope and dream. You got to be willing to get out there and do it. And when you do that, you get lucky.
Oh, absolutely. Them bright lights and slick nights, and those bright lights and slick nights ain't going to find you sitting around on Manning College, that's for sure. Yeah. So here we are, a long way from home. You want to add to this?
I guess I could.
Higher. Sorry, higher. They got me on the...
No problem.
I want to be heard here.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there needs to be a certain desire that people, it needs to go beyond the desire. It needs to get into action, right? You've actually got to show up. You've got to try, and put yourself in a position where you can capitalize on the lucky stuff that can happen, right? Like you can sort of look back on your life and identify where those moments of good fortune may have been, but in the moment you may not know that.
Yeah, only in hindsight could you be reflective on the action. Yeah.
Yeah, you can trace the story back, but going forward, you don't know when you're getting lucky. You just have to go and say yes a lot and try stuff. And
I'm going to jump on with you on that. I was going to say, I was speaking to Jaime about something. I said, PST, man, PST. And he's looking at me like, what are you talking? I said, positive self-talk, man. We have to incorporate positive self-talk. And you mentioned it actually in a sort of not so clear way, but you were saying, you have to get through this area of designs being difficult. And I want to draw attention to your arm. Before I forget, turn your arm and show them. This is a poignant example here. It's really relevant. Can you twist that way? Turn that way. There you go. Get his arm in the shot there. Hold it still right there. Hold it. There's this camera right here. When we get a shot of his arm, it says never too late. And that's definitely, those are words to live by. Never too late. Let's go back here. You, Cesar. We could go on all day. We could have a show we've done this before. Go for it. The sculpt off, finally.
Yes, sir.
From the pen into the fire, a man of your stature. You need no introduction. You've been around for a long time doing this. You've got a DVD behind us here inside the famous Noman store.
Yes, sir.
A DVD that I watched many moons ago to establish for me.
Sculpting Wrinkles.
Sculpting Wrinkles. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. Tell us about the sculpt up.
It was fun. I had a blast. I had a blast doing it. It's
takeaways.
Takeaways
from the situation of being
in terms of doing it again.
No, I mean, what do you take from the experience of being in a room with that many talented people?
Oh God, I mean, it's just inspiration, right? It's inspirational, man. I mean, you just look around and you're gobsmacked, right? I mean, everybody. From Fudio to Damien to, it's just crazy. It's crazy. I mean, if you've never been down to the ZBrush Summit, you got to, because you're literally surrounded by the best artists in the world. You're surrounded by all these people that you see their work online, and it's just unbelievable, So yeah, my big takeaway from this event, this is my first summit. The last one I did was SIGGRAPH with you guys.
Vancouver some time ago.
Yeah. So I'm so impressed, because everybody I bump into, it's like, I'm such a fan of your work.
Last night we had the 4-man photograph option with John Mahoney, creator of Zentropa, 200-page graphic novel done inside of ZBrush.
Unbelievable work.
Gave us these wonderful pieces to
Yeah.
myself, yourself, and Joe Mena.
Joe Mena,
And the four of us
absolutely.
standing, I said, well, this is only the ZBrush Summit could facilitate a meeting of that kind of magnitude.
It's look, we were trying to figure out how long I've been involved. I've certainly have tenure. I've been around.
No, that goes without saying.
But what I'm saying is it's wonderful to be able to look back and see where we were and where we are now, and where it's going. Like I just sort of rehashing what I said earlier. Every time it's unbelievable. It just gets better and better and better. And yeah, you guys got to come next year to the summit because it's insane. It's so much. It's very much worth your while.
It's a tremendous fluidity to the software that I think is sort of indicative of its the team that programs and it makes it happen is always thinking about the art aspect. I mean, I was a member of the team for many years as well, and I think that was at the forefront always of the discussions: is how is this going to effectively help people to be more creative and get past those areas of it not looking good at first as quickly as possible. And I think your presentation today was a really great example of saying, well, look, this is another tool for visualizing and communicating strongly with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I always tell, especially people that are starting out, it's like you got to go through that phase, and there's not everything you're going to create is going to be a winner. But you got to do them. You got to get them out, and you got to. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. You just have to do it.
Yeah, there's got to be space for learning as well. And I think I want to come back to your workflows. I mentioned a couple of different workflows that you've come to. The workflows, do you spend time developing them outside of the space of production, or are they informed by the kinds of challenges?
No, they're informed by the challenges. Absolutely.
And then you take them to their
yeah,
gear, right?
Yeah. I mean, you'll be in production and something will come up, and you're like, oh, how can I tackle this challenge and make it easier for myself and for the client and for, and for everybody else who's going to touch this later on. So you try to find a solution for that. And out of that, you end up creating workflows. So you don't set out like the dynamic thumbnailing. The dynamic thumbnailing came out of, the need of being able to go through tons of iterations and knowing that the traditional way of doing it, it's that 100th. Once you get all of those things out of your head that you think are good, that you start stumbling upon great ones. Yeah. So I was like, okay, but I don't want to do 100 of them. How can I do it so that I'm harnessing the computer to really allow me to come up with all of these happy accidents in the end? And that's how that came out of. It's all process based. It's
and
just
then we're seeing a break actually from traditional methodologies that, from a modeling standpoint, I would say that there's a break in what's been traditionally the sorts of workflows, conceptually speaking. There's, we saw the guys from XM, they were doing a presentation on action figures, but those assets, those guys are coming from a video game background. They're putting a lot of sort of their knowledge from video games. Do you want to comment on this? I mean,
in detail.
Well,
the conceptualization to finished product. You just basically laid it out for us in under an hour.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that I did see that XM presentation actually. That was pretty cool. I mean, I'm not a ZBrush artist. That wasn't my background. So for me, I'm kind of like a fan. I'm just sort of, we get to see, I love this kind of stuff. I love the design. So seeing those guys and what they do and how they kind of, use it in some ways, it's a universal kind of process. And if you're designing something, you're tackling the same issues, whether it's a figure or a character in a film or, whatever it might be. And they're clearly pros. I mean, they do great work, and the level of passion and detail, you can just sense it, right? They're using the tool in ways that, people couldn't have really imagined, not that many years ago. And it's just cool to see other people using the same techniques and getting to different places. And,
so that's something. That's why I brought it up. I thought it was really incredible. They went before you, and they essentially showed. We were chuckling about that hair demonstration. Yeah. We were sitting with Joe Mena at the time, and we were saying, I said to you, you can have your social life back.
Yeah.
At least some of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key. I mean, that's exactly what you hit the nail right on the head there. Because at the end of the day, they had a challenge. And through their creativity, they found a methodology, a workflow, because that's not like a push button thing inside of
Certainly not,
ZBrush.
no.
It's a series of things that they have to do to
Very
get that
process-driven.
effect. So, but in the end, it saves them, it solves the solution, and they get like a very complex thing very quickly. And that's what I love. That's what I absolutely love about ZBrush as a whole, is that I never quite understood, the naysayers back in the day that didn't understand the interface and whatnot.
I don't get that at all.
Because the beauty of it is that it literally is anything you want it to be. So that once you learn what it is, what it can do, then you can make it anything you want it to be. And within that, you can go through different processes and come up with really amazing workflows that allow you to do complex, structure and builds and whatnot. So I very much love, that was one of those, I love having aha moments, and that was a aha moment. That was one of like, oh, okay,
Oh,
cool.
we all
I'm
three. I think
keeping
all three of
that
us
one.
responded in the same regard.
I think the whole crowd,
Yeah.
it's funny, I've been here since Friday, and every day there's a couple of those moments where you can tell, because I'm not familiar enough with the
perfect for you,
tool
yeah.
to kind of know that's, I mean, it would look cool to me, but, when the whole room kind of goes, okay, something happened there.
Something good's going on, right? I mean, I think that, for me, you're hitting the nail on the head as well. We're really knocking them out of the park here. I had this lecture series I was doing, and I was discussing critical thinking processes for artists at the university. And what I came to was this understanding that there are two types of knowledge. There's academic knowledge and there's disciplinary knowledge. And someone in your situation with the amount you called it, at this point you have tenure. I have learned from this man. I mean, this is like I appreciate all of the contributions. Yeah, thank you. You're truly a leader in the field. And a friend, so that's a bonus for me. But here's the thing. Academic knowledge is getting caught up with the idea of interfaces, right? Once we move beyond this academic knowledge, we have disciplinary pursuits. Disciplinary pursuits is exactly what we've seen, those aha moments. How those aha moments have been facilitated is where an artist will say, I know that these buttons make red and blue, and I know that if I put the two buttons together, they make purple, but now I want to understand how many different ways can I use this purple and in what different context. And that to me is like the most challenging thing, because that learning never ends.
But that's the part that I love about it.
Yeah, me
to
too.
To me, that's the creativity aspect
Yeah.
of it. I am not a technical person. I'm dyslexic.
I'm certainly not a mathematician. I worked in accounting for a minute for TD. I'm like, I'm in the wrong gig here.
So my brain tends to search for easy. Like, how do I make this easier? That's just the way my brain works. So I search for those types of things. But it's also something, I love that challenge. That's a lot of fun to be able to go in there and like you said, understanding like, oh, okay, I can do this with this tool set, but what else can I do with it?
Yeah.
And then once you start mixing those things and marrying those things, then all of a sudden you realize, oh man, the spectrum is gigantic.
Yeah.
This like this workflow that we demonstrated today, once I kind of stumbled upon this idea that between this triangulation of morph targets, layers, and the tool that I'm working with, that I could really do anything within that and it be non-destructive, all of a sudden it was like the fear of the stroke went away, because then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I put down. Now I can just turn off a layer and away it goes.
Yeah.
I don't have to erase it. I'm not killing my detail. I'm not, and I didn't even get, we ended up having to truncate some of our time because our presentation, it was ambitious to begin with in terms of how much we wanted to cover.
Right.
But I didn't even get into the ideas of, maxing out, levels of geometry and all that sort of stuff, because even in there's so much play between, doing gross changes down at the bottom and still maintaining real high fidelity, scales and all that sort of stuff.
A lot of people don't realize that.
No.
That there's that distinction between the very low level stuff and the very high level stuff, and that the changes can actually be significant down here without really getting too crazy up here.
Absolutely.
On a spectrum, and I think that's like, again, comes to this idea of the disciplinary pursuits. Once you've arrived past or walked through the sort of a myriad of academic questions once you come to those levels of information and knowledge, that you start to see the application in different ways, and also the process. Because again, you've been around for a long time doing it traditionally. You know, you started off in Toronto in practical effects and makeup, for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a long way now.
Yeah, but it's still consistent. I mean, you know, what we do in the computer, whether I do it in the computer or I do it traditionally in clay, it's still the same thing. It's just a different tool, and that's another thing that I try to hearken out there and really be a proponent and a vocal proponent of that. You know, yeah. I mean, you can do literally the exact same things you do in the real world. In fact, the preface, the way I got involved with this was Jaime LaBelle sent me an email and invited me, you know, to be a part.
Pretty awesome.
And in the email it said I could sculpt in the computer, and I was like, okay, so I want to sculpt. So I emulated my real world workflow, and I was hooked. I was hooked. So yeah, it's unbelievable.
Speaking of getting hooked, we're getting a hook from the sidelines here. The program coming to an end on day 3 of the ZBrush Summit. I want to thank my fellow Torontonians and my new friend, basically Colin Davies. Thanks for being here on behalf of myself and everyone else here. Best of luck with the winter when you get back home. Cesar Dacol Jr., I will see you guys around the Christmas. I'll be home for Christmas. Paul, back over to you in the main stage. Thanks.